They suffered some of the best barbarous fates on the battlefields of the additional Apple War. And if they were captured often, afresh, they were attempted instantly on the spot. Changeable Soviet soldiers were apparent on the advanced lines, and they had a huge array of jobs in the Red Army. And additionally, the Soviet Air Force, from bottomward payloads of bombs, assimilate German positions to nursing, and alike ample through the austere out-charcoal of Stalingrad to delay and afresh abstract a baronial German officer. The women who fought adjoined the Germans, and the Axis generally faced alarming ends if they were captured, admitting, and for their adversary, they anticipation that women should be boilerplate abreast the battlefield at all. They admired changeable soldiers as a stern action of the exact behavior that they capital to clean out and destroy. But why were German soldiers and admiral ordered to shoot changeable soldiers on armpit and cull the activate on them as anon as they captured them? Women played a cardinal role in the Soviet Union's war efforts. Best of them formed central industry and agriculture, befitting the accoutrements industry's activity and befitting the acreage fed. But to accomplish up for a curtailment of men who were absent on the Eastern Front, adjoin the German aggression of the nation, women were allowed to fight on the front line. About 800,000 women served in the Red Army, and best of them formed in medical units. In total, they fabricated up about 5% of the country's aggressive cadre deployed during Apple War II Stalin to activate with angry bags of women abroad from confined in the aggressive who had volunteered. But afresh as things became alarming, with huge losses and casualties in the angry of the Eastern Front, Stalin began to acquire women who capital to accident their lives in aggressive operations and actions. One of the best acclaimed roles they undertook was as aviators and flyers. In particular, there was the 46th Guards Night Bomber Regiment, a accumulating of women aviators and pilots who flew raids beneath the awning of darkness, bottomward bombs from anachronous biplanes, generally in blackout on adversary positions. These women became accepted as the night witches. But there were added changeable aerodynamics regiments, including some who flew fighters adjoin the Luftwaffe. Also, the Soviet Union deployed women as snipers.
Central towns and cities. About 2 and a bisected 1,000 women served as snipers, and they would clamber through austere out-charcoal in cities such as Stalingrad and Leningrad. Cat and mouse, their time to booty out a high-ranking officer. The accumulated annihilate absolute of changeable snipers was about 11,000, about 5 times their absolute deployment numbers, and some racked up huge annihilate counts. About 500 of these women would survive the war, but women additionally served in anti-aircraft batteries and in additional curve of advance and defense. Best were told to backpack weapons and rifles, alike those who helped to abandon men from the advance curve if they had become injured. However, in the eyes of the Germans and the Nazi enemy, the use of changeable soldiers wasn't aloof shocking. They counted it as subhuman and immoral. Because of this, captured changeable Soviet soldiers were attempted by Germans afterwards, their abduction rather ruthlessly. There were added affidavit too, but the cutting of women incompatible was abiding in Nazi ideology, aggressive orders, and the action absoluteness of activity on the advanced lines. Firstly, the Nazi credo and behavior declared that a woman's role was affiliated carefully to bearing and confined a male-dominated state. From an adolescent age, German women were told that their abode was in the home, and they were told to accept as abounding accouchement for the Reich as possible, so Hitler could body up a huge empire. Also, they were accomplished in adolescence groups how to back her and advance a household, and they were not accepted to accept aerial cachet job. The abstraction for the Nazis of a woman captivation, a burglarize, and angry in action was beheld as an abuse of the accustomed adjustment, and German advertising depicted Soviet women soldiers as not feminine, and they categorized the accomplishments as a arduous action of communism and Bolshevism. The attendance of women on the battlefield for the Red Army anon challenged the Nazi apple view. So aback German troops captured armed Soviet women. They believed they were ambidextrous with aberrant enemies rather than accepted soldiers who did deserve the aegis of captive of war status. This was all brainy, and it led to abounding women actuality shot, abnormally by SS soldiers. The German aggressive additionally did not admit changeable combatants as allowable soldiers. Alike aback, they were cutting uniform, accustomed to aggressive ID, and confined as allotment of beyond Red Army units. They were frequently labeled as partisans and attrition fighters, and this was actually important as the German army and the SS had continuing orders to shoot partisans immediately. The Eastern Advanced was additionally advisedly absolved from the standards of the Geneva Convention. With this, it meant that a woman incompatible could be aloof, said to accept a bene accessory, and a fresh attempt aback this was not the case at all, and it would, of advance, be technically a war crime. The administrator of the German Fourth Army, Gunga von Kluge, issued an adjustment to his men that go, I quote, "All women who were begin in Soviet Army compatible are to be attempt beeline away." As mentioned, an ample cardinal of changeable Soviet soldiers served in awful accomplished action roles, inaccurate those as snipers. Some were accomplished in assassin training schools, and women like Lyudmila Pavlichenko racked up dozens of kills. Now, snipers of any army were usually attempt aloft their abduction because they inflicted casualties, and afterwards, actuality seen, and they were beheld as bashful assassins rather than accustomed infantry soldiers. The Germans appear encountering women in assassin roles unfairly, and the shootings of women soldiers became alike added common.